Mr. Pancakes,
Yes, sir.
can you tell me the one thing that you see on this screen?
The polarizing, controversial, multi-layer man known as Mr. McMahon.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a documentary on Netflix called Mr. McMahon, starring none other than our pal here, Vince.
Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Yeah. So, look, it basically tells you a semi biographical story of his life. He's giving you what he wants you to know.
At least at first.
I think this is where we're going to differ. And I'm going to say this from the beginning, and you guys take it for what you will. If you have been watching wrestling for the last 20 years, everything that is said in this documentary, you know already. So I saved you 5 episodes. Now, if there's one thing that you want to know, it's just in one episode. And that's basically, how do I say this? The only reason why Shane McMahon does what he does. And that's Vince's son. Other than that, I'm going to let Joe Pancakes tell you what he thinks about this.
It was definitely a great, up into the controversy of the scandal, which we don't have to get into, that first started in 2022.
Which one? There's like 50 of them.
The most recent one.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you could tell this was put out there initially as a greatest hits of Vince McMahon, while still addressing his scandals. They didn't shy away from it from the 90s. You know, the steroid trial.
Right, but all these things, we know about these people.
Exactly.
And all this stuff that they said in the first 5 episodes is all things that we know of. Nothing that came out of this is new. This is everything coming out of his mouth.
Well, one thing that I finally got an answer about is when Shane McMahon tried to convince his dad to buy the UFC.
But we knew that if you...
But Vince explained why he didn't want to.
I completely understand why he said no to that, but it's something that we knew already. Well, we didn't know that the specific thing as to why, but I think pushing this to a 6-hour documentary about Vincent Kennedy McMahon, I learned nothing new about him. I learned nothing new. It's almost as if he was in character and he just wanted you to believe what he wanted you to believe.
Well, that's why he tried to get the documentary pulled, because he put out a whole statement, etc., that the documentary put emphasis on that he's really like his real life Mr. McMahon character, but then there's a part where people differ whether he is like that. You know, his real life personality turned the volume all the way up, or is there really much difference between Mr. McMahon on TV and Vince in real life?
Well, that's the thing, though. Even his kids, his children said, yeah, Vince McMahon is Mr. McMahon, is the character. There's no difference. It was just slightly dialed up. That's like nothing special. Nothing new has been said that we didn't know.
I understand that, but, before, the controversy came out in 2022 and he had his first step down before he left for good last year with the latest scandal, it still would have been something I would have watched because it's wrestling history. A lot of stuff I revisit, old emotions. Yes, it's the greatest hit. But what did you think? Let me ask you this. When they did the updated interviews, what did you think of Bruce Pritchard's comments that it was just a gotcha piece, that they made Vince look like an asshole? They never talked about the positivity.
I think that Bruce is wrong. They talked a lot about the positivity that Vince did.
Yeah.
Okay, like for instance, right after Hart passed away, they did more security checks. They spoke about that when Chris Benoit passed away. However you want to call that situation with Chris Benoit, they started looking into more into head X-rays and everything like that. So he did good I don't think Bruce Pritchard really paid attention to the documentary because it said good things about him. It said bad things about him. Did it say that he was the worst person in the world? No. He was just showing you that he grew up in a tough environment, so he made everyone else around him live in that tough environment.
Also, Bruce would have a biased opinion
Of
because
course.
he's close to Vince. He worked side by side for years.
For what, 20, 30 years they were working together? 20 years.
Something like that. Look, up into the 2022, everything before that is enjoyable for any wrestling fan. And they try to make it appeal to non-fans with all the interviews. But let me ask you this, though. Did Netflix make the right move considering the deal they just made with WWE and TKO? The $5 billion 10-year deal with Raw coming next year, and they still want to put out this documentary with the bad press that comes with Vince?
Of course. You're gonna watch it now, and then in 2-3 months when Raw goes on Netflix, you're gonna watch that too. There's no loss here. It's nothing but a win for
Right.
Netflix.
It's a win-win, but I still think WWE wanted nothing to do with it, even though these interviews were done and recorded well in advance. You know, everybody from The Rock, Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, his kids.
Tony Atlas.
Tony
who,
Atlas.
Surprisingly, Tony Atlas is in this way more than I ever could have imagined. Now, if you don't know, Tony Atlas was The Rock's father's partner.
They were the first black tag team champions
Yes.
in WWF.
So he was in this way more than he was 10 times in this longer than Vincent McMahon was.
Well, I guess he's like the go-to, and he needed a paycheck. He's the go-to. He's one of the go-to interview wrestlers on Dark Side of the Ring. If you've seen that show,
Okay.
Yeah, he was in it a lot, but I guess he was supposed to give the perspective of working with Vince in the '80s, taking steroids,
Right.
that part of it. But
Well, that's the thing, though. He never told you to take steroids,
right,
but he never stopped you from taking
He-
steroids.
and Vince didn't sell it.
Correct.
So that was the thing that the feds tried to get him back in 1993.
Right.
But yes, those scandals, it got pretty dark. I mean, there's a lot of dark parts, but when the one scandal I forgot about was the
Sable?
not Siebel, the early '90s with the Ring Crew with the boys.
Oh,
Pat
yeah,
Patterson,
yeah.
that-
Yeah. I totally forgot about that one until they brought it up, yeah.
And then one of Vince's answers to his questions, like when the first female referee had allegations against Vince, and Vince is like, well, you know, the statutes of limitations ran out, and it was consensual, but if something did happen, you know, that ran out. But then at the end of that episode, it said that he ended up paying her damages.
X amount of money, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, but he felt like Vince would just weather the latest storm. But even this latest news was too much, and that it's right in the text messages, and he's on the federal investigation again. There's no way he could have stayed with WWE and TKO now, and the company's doing fine just without him, because like. So a lot of those interviews are 2 years old, 3 years old.
Yeah,
Like,
'cause they started filming in
2021.
Oh, 21?
2021.
Okay.
Around the same time, whatever it may be. However, you know, they're saying, oh, there's no way Vince will ever leave. There's nothing that could shake him down. But, you know,
And lo and behold, scandal makes him leave.
yeah, but, you know, it's in great hands with Triple H finally in charge of the ship. I wish Shane was right there, too. But, you know, you saw how him and his dad butted heads. That part, yeah, again, nothing new, but we got more of an insight hearing it from Vince.
Right.
Yeah.
But you also found out from Shane himself that the reason why he put himself through all these things that he did was just so he can have his father appreciate and say that, you know, he was proud of him for what he did. Now, that was one thing that was brand spanking new. I've never personally ever heard of that.
I knew some of that, yeah.
But the second thing that happened in 3 episodes, three episodes prior to that, was the fact that finally, Terry Bollea, who everyone knows as Hulk Hogan, admitted that he ratted out Jake the Snake.
Jesse Ventura.
Oh, sorry, Jesse Ventura, when he ratted him out saying that he went and told Vince, this guy is trying to unionize everything. For 30 some odd years, he has been saying, I would never do that, brother. And guess
Well,
what?
of course,
Yeah, you did.
he was the biggest Vince loyalist. One guy that let loose and that did not give a flying fuck.
Bret Hart?
Yes, he read my mind.
Yep.
And when they cut, and when the camera cut back, when they cut back to Vince, I'm like, oh, Bret can just believe whatever he wants. My horrible Vince impression. However, look, if you could take he's the most important name in pro wrestling history. We wouldn't be where we are. Nobody would have
If it wasn't for him and Hogan, I totally agree.
Mostly him, but Vince, beyond polarizing, multiple layers, controversial. It's his way or the highway.
Yeah.
He had falling out with person after person, only to bring him back. Emphasis on business. He was a businessman.
Right.
He doesn't allow himself to. He's ready to move on to the next thing.
And I don't blame him. Let's be honest here. He's trying to make money, right?
All right.
So you're going to say and do whatever it is in order to get that money.
Even before the sale, like Vince McMahon pretty much bullied his way back into the company.
Right.
The board of directors voted him unanimously not to come back, but he was still the main stockholder, and he put people back on the board to get the votes that he needed, but to get the money he made off the sale to TKO, who has 51% control interest in the company. But of course, when you're working for somebody else, you don't have final say that like Vince had since the early 80s.
Yep, I agree. Oh, there's one other thing. There's one more thing that just proves how big of a liar Hulk Hogan was.
Oh no.
When he turned around and said that he wanted to be Triple H, he wanted to be Hollywood Hulk Hogan, he wanted to turn heel on Ultimate Warrior, and yet
I've heard him say that in an interview before, yeah.
And yet what? The original Come on, man. Stop it.
Another
Terry, stop it. Stop it.
Another thing Vince is a big delusional about was, the controversial ending of The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. That he said, I don't think The Undertaker got a concussion. Could have happened. But The Undertaker has said multiple times that he doesn't remember the majority of that match. And when he got dropped on his head, he's like, I think he was in a psychological shock or trauma that his streak was ending. No, The Undertaker does what's his best, what he's told, out of loyalty to you. And, Vince went to the hospital with him, but he's like, could have got concussed. Come on, Vince.
Again, I don't know who's the bigger liar, Hulk or Vince.
Well, did you realize how they fact checked him in a way? He's like, we don't have guns. Cut to Brian Pillman pulling a gun, Stone Cold in the controversy from Raw in 1997. We don't have rapists. He cuts to a promo, I think, in 1999 on Raw.
Yeah.
Say, come out here, you rapes. We don't have so-and-so. He had a match with his own daughter on pay-per-view right before her own wedding.
Which is kind of messed up on his part, because he originally wanted, when she got married, he wanted her to do a pay-per-view of her wedding.
What about the incest storyline he wanted to do?
Okay. That's just mind-boggling. Thank God that didn't happen, because he turned around and said, hey, let's do a storyline where I impregnate my own daughter. What is wrong with you, Vince?
And then also...
What is wrong with you?
And getting back to Sable, she sued the company.
And then
sexual harassment comes back and does the same exact storyline where she's in a love angle with Vince McMahon.
What is going on here?
It's the sick mind, but I think... Yes, there's a lot of things we know, but a lot of things you forgot about that you get reminded of. You're saying it's not worth the time. I say see it, so we're split on that.
Well, here's the thing. If you've been watching wrestling for 20, 30 years, don't watch it. You're not missing out on anything. But if you're a new wrestling fan and you've only been watching wrestling maybe 10 or so years, maybe even 5 years, maybe you started wrestling last week, then it's good to watch it. So that way you know. But other than that...
But I know wrestling fans that have been watching as long as 20, 30 years that will still watch it.
Well, again... But it's like, to me, it's like, if I'm going to watch a documentary, I want to know something new about this individual. I want to know something that, it's a documentary about Vince McMahon, not the WWE. We know everything about the WWE because you've been a lifelong fan, right?
Yes, sir.
You know all these things. You didn't learn anything new about Vince. Nothing. There is nothing that you didn't know about Vince that he hasn't said in any other interview.
I think the complicated relationship with his own father, I think I learned more about. And some of that
They
stuff.
barely touched upon that, and that was in the first 10 minutes of the docuseries.
Anyway, there's a lot to process.
Very. Anything else you want to add in?
If you, I say watch it. There's a lot. I mean, some of it you could skip if you know it, but I say watch all 6 episodes.
And I'll say, don't watch any, just listen to our review here, and that's pretty much it. You don't have to watch anything else. But the question goes out to you, the wrestling fans, the people who watched the docuseries on Mr. McMahon. Let us know in the comment section down below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or do you think, hey, I already know this shit. Tell me something I don't know. Let us know.